The nurse comes in and sits down and talks to me, asks me how I am, and I just cry. My husband looks at me and says, "You said you were fine," and he gets upset because he thinks I've lied, but I haven't. It's just that she's asked me a question, and it was said to me in a specific way that made me let go because I needed to cry. So my husband goes up into the garage and just stays there for about 5, 6, 7 hours. Then he comes back in and he asked me and he said to me, "You've told me that you're fine and then you're crying, why?" And he didn't understand that.
I don't understand what's going on, and obviously I'm frightened and my wife's frightened, and that's why we wanted an interpreter. So I said, "Come on, hold on to this, let's put this on hold. We'll go back to the doctor, say, come on, you need to book an interpreter. We want to have an interpreter so that we're clear on the whole of the procedure, what's going on, and I can digest all the information, and it saves arguing with my wife as well. So please can you book an interpreter? That's what we need."
The professional people involved in medical say we want to keep the couple together. But if you don't provide an interpreter for my husband, then you are splitting us up. And it has almost at times made us really unhappy.
The lack of a trained interpreter can also be dangerous. A sign may be misunderstood, with serious consequences.
Anyway, how are you feeling at the moment?
Really low, I'm tired, drained.
Right, so sorry about that. These are common side effects with chemotherapy, and they are extremely uncomfortable, but nothing in itself to worry about it.
What's he talking about? I don't understand. What's he saying?
Not knowing sign language, the doctor thinks Cheryl's downward hand movement just means she's feeling low.
Well, what happened was that when she came in and described how she was feeling, she was using a deaf sign for low, just like this. And obviously, if you're not familiar with deaf sign, then you might interpret it as just feeling tired or feeling low in energy, or just feeling run down, rather than specifically depressed, is what the sign means. And so, as a result, well, she was talking about feeling low and depressed. The health professional thought she was talking about just the common side effects of chemotherapy, which is about feeling fatigued and run down and a lack of energy. When it isn't picked up, it invariably tends to get worse, and it also can lead to difficulties that interfere with treatment. In the long run, people can become quite hopeless, and it can even lead to also suicide.
But even with an interpreter, a medical appointment is rarely straightforward. Too often an interpreter is unprepared for what may be a complex diagnosis and a traumatic encounter.
I just turned up at the hospital and met Cheryl and Philip for the first time. Cheryl straight away came up to me. She didn't introduce herself, she just said, "Oh, I've got breast cancer." And that kind of impacted me immensely. As to think, well, how does she know this before we've even met a doctor? And she was explaining that she'd had a previous booking where there was no interpreter, and the ultrasound had confirmed it, and it wasn't even a doctor who had confirmed that she'd got cancer, and so she was left over a weekend stewing with this information. She briefly told me what was going on before we went into the doctor's room. So having all that and then seeing how Phil was getting very emotionally upset made me get upset, and I didn't even know Cheryl and Philip until I'd met them on the morning. And then the doctor was saying, right, we need to do treatment. She has to have so many weeks of chemotherapy followed by radiotherapy. It was just lots of information in a short period of time. And I think what would have been better would to have been met the doctor, explained what was going on, for me to process it.
The doctors are aware what they're going to say to their patients when they've got results, especially if they're going to say that yes, you have got cancer, or whatever, you know, it's a life-threatening illness, or what the diagnosis and that. Now, Ellen's in a position where she isn't going to know this information, so she's going to be very much put on the spot.
Because just being put in that situation, the doctor flying off with information that he would do on a daily basis that I don't have much dealing with.
So she's not prepared for it. So to have the doctor, to have that little pre-session with the interpreter, just to make them aware what the discussion's going to be about, so that it, you know, they are prepared just as much as the doctors are for their reaction.
And having that thrown at you to then make sure that the deaf people are understanding it, but at the point that you're wanting to make sure that they understand it fully so they don't go home, because most deaf people will nod in agreement even though they haven't understood.
I wanted to make sure that I was able to understand the signing, and if I didn't understand it, I could always interrupt and say, "I'm sorry," throw it back to the doctor, and the doctor could translate again.
So for me, I wanted to make sure that Philip and Cheryl both understood. They got the time to ask questions. So if they weren't sure, I would then kind of try and not catch them out, but I would ask Phil, "Do you understand this?" and throw a question at him to see what his response would be.
It's the jargon. So if Ellen was to say a medical jargon word, then I could throw it back at Ellen to ask the doctor to translate it in a bit more detail.
So then I'd know then that he'd understood the information that I'd passed on. But I think it's just allowing more time with the deaf community, because with hearing people we have the information on a daily basis, so we get to see it in the newspapers, the TV shows, conversations, we get to pick up a lot more information, and like you'll hear a lot of the time, deaf people are always the last to know.
Hearing people have easier access to their GPs, whereas we often have to wait 1 or 2 weeks for an appointment. Why is it that hearing people get the appointment and deaf people are the ones that suffer? Serious illness is inherently stressful for everyone involved. For the deaf community, a difficult situation is often made worse when basic communication requirements are lacking. The challenge for Cheryl and Philip lies in balancing their reasonable anger with finding ways to relax.
I'll clean my teeth. The only way that I can really enjoy myself at the moment and switch off is card making, with music on. But I do get angry. Sometimes I go to the mirror, my own mirror, and I look at me and I say, "What's the matter with you? What are you getting so upset about? Come on, get on with it." and you have to do that. You have to, because all the way through the cancer and the chemo, if I didn't have that anger, I don't think I would have got through. You need the anger to challenge yourself. And some people can't do that when you're by yourself. I'm really sorry for them.
It's the same for me. My anger as well. I still have that, and I still believe it will carry me through to the future as well. And that's why I like going on my motorbike so much, because as Cheryl was saying about things she needs to switch off, my motorbike is my freedom, it's my source. And I can get to myself, I can change everything, my perspective of life when I'm out on my motorbike. It gives me that freedom, that bit to myself, that bit of time. Just feel that. You can feel it expand, and at the same time you can then bring it forward, you can make it go faster, and it just gives you a sense of belonging. So you know, then put your foot down and off you go. 5th gear, off you go.
And people say, why don't deaf people complain? They never got a problem. So how do you complain if you don't understand them? Think about it. I had to get that in.